So much to get to again, and none of it Dave Chappelle. These episodes are getting long. There's just so much going on. By the way, October was the most listened to, most downloaded month for the podcast yet. I appreciate you listening. Thank you very much. Facebook had kind of a crappy week. Jimmy Kimmel said, "I miss when Facebook was just a safe place to lose your house in a pyramid scheme." Another interesting detail is that Facebook engineers, they'll prioritize the posts that get a lot of emoji reactions, including the anger emoji, by 5-1 over just the regular like. The hate and the lies on Facebook, it's like the nicotine in a cigarette. It's not what you come for, but it's why you stick around. Trevor Noah said, "Yeah, that's right. Facebook knew it was rewarding crap posts as long as they generated an emotional response. And I'll be honest, when I first heard about this, I was shocked because I couldn't believe that Mark Zuckerberg knows what emotions are. Although it does make sense because in regular life, we all put more value on things that produce an emotional response in us. You know, it's why Donald Trump became president and Jeb Bush works at a Quiznos now. Fallon, of course, everybody's been talking about Facebook lately. Mark Zuckerberg just announced that he's retooling the social media platform toward young adults and away from older users. Honestly, let's just make it a little harder to sign in and you'll never see an old person on Facebook. Facebook also changed its name. There's a bunch of jokes about that, but I'll save that for later in the week because there's so much to get to, including the late night host covering the latest in President Biden's Build Back Better plan, or what's left of it. You may have seen that it was cut back. Trevor Noah said, "A lot of what was originally there is now gone, like free community colleges out, and so's paid family medical leave, which means America remains the only nation in the world where women try to give birth during their lunch break. Oh, and Medicare won't cover the cost of dental or vision care for seniors, but it will cover hearing," which makes sense. You know, Biden made sure that stayed in. When you got a president that whispers as much as he does, you got to make sure people can at least hear him. But don't worry, moms. You don't have to go into work while you're in labor. Just zoom in from the birthing room. Seth Myers, Biden met with House Democrats to discuss his health care spending proposal on the infrastructure bill, which is now down to a 30-day trial for WebMD Plus, and they're going to paint some tunnels on a rock like Wile E. Coyote Colbert. The plan features subsidies for childcare and universal preschool for more than 6 million 3- and 4-year-olds, to which parents everywhere replied, "But what about 2-year-olds who could pass for 3? Please, I can't watch any more Peppa Pig. My toddler has adopted an English accent and won't let me eat bacon. Seth, it's insane." Everyone deserves the right to be at home with their families and children. Besides, in my experience, the more time you spend with your kids, the more desperate you are to get back to work. Seth, free vision care for anyone with perfect 20/20 eyesight. A 1% tax hike on billionaires for each trip to outer space. Guaranteed childcare for children ages 3 to 4, provided by children ages 5 to 6. For anyone who wants to attend community college, a free copy of Community Season 1 on DVD. If anything falls off a crumbling bridge or overpass and hits you, you get to keep it. For women who've just given birth, a big scoop of Turkey Hill's Rocky Road ice cream in lieu of paid leave. They've added 2 more Take Your Child to Work days. Any 12 albums for just 1 penny. Student loan forgiveness? You still have to pay it back, but we'll forgive you for making the mistake of taking one out. Universal wealth care? 1 extra digit in each American social security number. Guaranteed pre-K for wacky adult children whose hotel magnate fathers pay their way through elementary and high school, but would now like to prove themselves as competent, functioning adults in order to take over the family business. You can use the bathroom if you ask nicely. Everyone is eligible to receive $1 million from a billionaire in exchange for just 1 night with your wife. 1 free month of Tubi, and they'll throw in a traffic cone next to the pothole in your street if you quit whining about it. And finally, a new houseboat for Joe Manchin. All right, we got to visit Gossip Corner. Olivia Munn dropped by late night with Seth Myers. Guess what she was asked about her pregnancy? Seth asked the soon-to-be first-time mom if she had received any baby advice. Olivia Munn, pregnant with John Mulaney's baby, said, "The one piece of advice that's coming to my head that I would not classify as great, but it's the only one I'm thinking of right now, is I have a friend of mine who said she has a gift of being able to tell how tall your baby will be. She said, 'Do you want to know how tall your baby will be?' So I said, 'Sure.' She said, 'Okay, how tall are you?' I'm 5'5". 'How tall is John Mulaney?' He's 6 feet. She goes, the baby will be 6 feet. It was the only time she referenced John Mulaney. I wonder if there were ground rules. I mean, Seth Myers has John Mulaney on all the time. Seems like the kind of person you'd ask Olivia about. No? Very curious moment on Gossip Corner. Super mega spoilers for the morning show. If you're not caught up, I'll give you 3 seconds to skip ahead about a minute. 3, 2, 1. From Vulture. Oh my goodness, they killed off Steve Carell's character. I told you there was a spoiler. I gave you the countdown. Catherine Van Arendonk, writing for Vulture, said, they did need to get rid of Steve Carell. I don't watch the morning show. I don't know. I'm not anti. I just don't watch it. It's like, I guess I'm agnostic. But they did need to get rid of Steve Carell, apparently. Killing him makes, I guess, as much sense as anything else they would have done at this point. But all of the absurdity and strangeness we've been poking at so far is the result of this show not realizing that Steve Carell needed to leave a long, long time ago. There's been no reason for him to be as heavily featured as he has this season, and every time the show skipped back to do some Italy storytelling, it's been quite clear that they could not figure out how to keep Mitch around any longer. So yeah, they needed him to be gone, and this is probably the most morning show way they could have possibly done it, although I agree, none of the storytelling leads you to understand why he's taking his hands off the wheel at that point. Apparently he drove off a cliff, I don't know, or why he's going to get cigarettes at all, because is this a coronavirus pandemic, or isn't it? Can I float a crazy idea here? Hey, Steve Carell, you listening? Morning show didn't work out. Space Force, not so good. Here's an idea. Michael Scott realizes Colorado isn't great, and he moves back to Scranton. Know what I'm saying? Rainn Wilson will be there in 5 minutes. You probably can't get Krasinski, but that's okay, because his character moved to Texas anyway. We can't have everybody move back to Scranton. But what if Michael Scott, moved back to Scranton, went home, and we reunited the gang? Think about it. No, seriously, think about it. For this next section, The Hollywood Reporter put out an article called The 40-ish Most Influential People in Comedy 2021, from comedy royalty like Kevin Hart, Larry David, and Tina Fey, and touring titans like Ali Wong and yes, Dave Chappelle, to the distinctive new voices making breakout hits like Hacks and Reservation Dogs. These are the people shaping the funny business right now. I have not read this at all. I might even be on the list. Sarah Cooper might be on the list. Bob's Burgers might be on the list. Who knows? I'm reading this for the first time because I wanted to share my reaction with you. First up, the creators of Hacks. I'm not going to read this entire article. Okay, Hacks is good. Don't feel like reading that paragraph. Judd Apatow. Their reasoning: in the past year and a half, he's added Pete Davidson to the long list of emerging talent whose voices he's helped bring to the screen. This with the King of Staten Island. Hey, Judd's pretty good. Okay. Awkwafina. For Awkwafina is Nora from Queens. Yeah, 40, and we're already at Awkwafina, yeah? All right. Kenya Barris for writing Coming to America, and he has an upcoming Netflix comedy that will serve as his feature directorial debut. It's Meet the Parents meets Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. All right, interesting list so far. Dave Bird and Jack Schaefer for the series Dave, a.k.a. The Little Dicky Show on FXX. All right. Not interested in the list so far, but this next section I am interested in. Bill Burr, Hassan Minhaj, John Mulaney, Ali Wong, under the section Touring Titans. All right, let's read this. Stand-up returns post-shutdown. Mulaney, Burr, Minhaj, and Wong are leading the comedy comeback. Blah, blah, blah. They're touring. Minhaj says, the last year's been a reminder to embrace the cosmic joke. We only get one ride in this roller coaster called life, so we might as well enjoy it. Bo Burnham, interesting pick here. What Burnham did should have been impossible. Perfectly encapsulate the isolating despair of the pandemic and the multifaceted complexity of the internet's virtue toxicity in a single Netflix special made entirely by himself. I lied. I thought we were not going to talk about Dave Chappelle today, but this next section is called Dave Chappelle, the most controversial comedian in the world at the moment, perhaps. But there can be no denying that Dave Chappelle also remains the most influential. Yep. Before the closer gate sucked up the oxygen, the Mark Twain Prize-winning stand-up, 48 years old, was closing out a triumphant pandemic year that included 846 and Chappelle's summer camp. At a recent show at London's Apollo, Dave Chappelle said, right now in America, there's two types of Americans, the kind that like my special and the kind that don't. Michaela Cole is an anchor, writer, producer. She has made the list. The Hollywood Reporter said it's hard to write a comedy blurb for the 34-year-old British multi-hyphenate because of her seminal work, the universally acclaimed I May Destroy You. Larry David makes the list. You're all familiar with Larry David. Keep moving. Will Ferrell and his producing partner, Jessica Albaum. Who knew? They make the list for producing a bunch of things, including the new Apple TV Plus's The Shrink Next Door. Can't question Will Ferrell being on a list. You also can't question Tina Fey being on the list. She had two solid shows in 2021, Peacock's Girls 5 Eva and NBC's Mr. Mayor. I like Mr. Mayor. Both of those will be back for a second season. That's good. Ziwe Fumido spent her quarantine asking everyone from Alyssa Milano to Fran Lebowitz, how many black people do you know? Her satirical talk show born on YouTube made a pandemic pivot to Instagram Live, where it amassed a cult following and then was picked up by Showtime, transforming into a full-scale variety show. That's pretty awesome. Kristen Wiig and Annie Momolo Wig and Momolo's Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar became the sleeper hit of quarantine after it was sent to PVOD by Lionsgate. It did? It was a sleeper hit? I'm here every day, Hollywood Reporter. I Google comedy, comedian. I read your site, read some other sites. This was a sleeper hit during the pandemic. You sure? I mean, I guess you have the numbers. Audience, have any of you seen this thing or heard of this thing? Even Bob's Burgers is like, is that a thing? I don't know about this list. Tiffany Haddish. She's coming back in a big way. She'll be opposite Nicolas Cage in Lionsgate's The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Sterling Harjo broke into the Hollywood scene. He co-created FX's Reservation Dogs. That's a good solid show if you haven't checked that out. Dan Harmon, I'll read this paragraph. Harmon remains a mad genius of storytelling, trope-busting with his Emmy-winning Adult Swim hit Rick and Morty, and is now preparing a return to broadcast with his upcoming ancient Greece set animated series Krapopolis, which might be Fox's best hope in years for adding a title to its Sunday night animated lineup that can keep up with The Simpsons and Family Guy. Notice what show they didn't mention there. Let me read it to you again slowly. Sunday night animated lineup that could keep up with The Simpsons and Family Guy. Not mentioned. Bob's Burgers. I'll ask you 2 questions right now. First question. Have you ever seen Bob's Burgers? The answer is no. You and I both know you've never seen it. Second question. Have you ever met anyone who has seen Bob's Burgers? The answer is no. Now that you think about it, right? The answer is no. Here's why. It doesn't exist. I know they promote it. It's not actually on. Dan Harmon said, oh my God, I just Googled Fox. I have to call my agent. Krapopolis is also set to be the first major series to issue NFTs. I want to bang my head against the wall now. A stunt that seems so much like something Harmon would mock that we can't help but wonder whether he's trolling us. All right, I've got more of this list, but Daily Comedy News is not a volunteer effort. I'm here to make $1. Some commercials. Be right back. Today's Daily Comedy News is brought to you by the Behind the Bits podcast. This is the one where Scott Curtis learns everything he can about stand-up comedy from his guests. He took a different road on the most recent episode. The guest, Nina Kraus, PhD, scientist, inventor, and amateur musician. Nina studies the biology of auditory learning. She began her career measuring responses from single auditory neurons and was one of the first to show that the adult nervous system has the potential for reorganization following learning. These insights in basic biology galvanized her to investigate auditory learning in humans. It's the Behind the Bits podcast. Scott Curtis gets some pretty good reviews. Again, audience, you need to step up your review game for Daily Comedy News. I don't get anything like this. Somebody reviewed the show 5 stars. This is Behind the Bits. Nobody's 5-starring me. Somebody gave Behind the Bits 5 stars and said, the idea of stand-up is frightening. The idea of starting a podcast about stand-up is probably equally frightening. Scott hits the subject with fearlessness that is requisite for a comedian. I'm not scared doing my podcast. I'm also not a comedian. I'm just an idiot reading stories in the basement like a loser. Scott Curtis and the Behind the Bits podcast has won the Discover Pod's annual award for Best Interview Style Podcast. You can follow Behind the Bits on Twitch, watch the interviews live and unedited. Oh my goodness, if I ever handed in an unedited version of this show, the amount I stumble, you guys have no idea. Because for the most part, I clean up the edits pretty well. You have no idea. Behind the Bits podcast, wherever you get your shows. Let's get back to this Hollywood Reporter list. It's the 40-ish most influential people in comedy. I am not on the list so far. Kevin Hart is. Hard to question that one. He's a top-earning stand-up with 4 Netflix specials. He has his own comedy network, a Peacock deal. He's a superstar actor and producer. He's producing the upcoming STX sneaker comedy American Soul starring Pete Davidson. And he appears in Netflix's buddy comedy Me Time along Mark Wahlberg. And he's got an action comedy, The Man from Toronto, coming in January. Kevin Hart, definitely influential. Jason Heyman is an agent. Mindy Kaling. What are we singing the praises of Mindy Kaling for this week? Let's see. Mindy Kaling has quietly become a Gen Z heroine thanks to the evergreen popularity of The Office. Yes, okay. And ascendant high school set Netflix creation Never Have I Ever. The 42-year-old writer, producer, and actress has a proven knack for speaking to those outside her own age group. And her new thing is HBO Max's sweet and raunchy The Sex Lives of College Girls out November 18th. All right, good job, Mindy Kaling. Chris Kelly and Sarah Schneider, the former SNL head writers. They are the writers for The Other Two on HBO Max, one of my favorite things to watch these days. They're also working on a dark psychological comedy for HBO. That as yet untitled series follows a closeted gay teen at the turn of the last millennium. You mean like 20 years ago or 1,020 years ago? You could have just said at the millennium. We wouldn't know what you meant. I know you didn't mean the year 3000. Who disassociates and imagines his life is just a role for a famous straight actor. Nick Kroll is on the list, the creator of Big Mouth. Also the voice of Uncle Fester in The Addams Family 2. Didn't know that. Phil Lord and Chris Miller are working on a reboot of Clone High, the animated series that put them on the